Now, joining me here in the studio to discuss this further is Hassan Ahmadian. He's an associate professor at the University of Tehran, and David Desroches, who is a professor at the Thayer Marshall Institute. Welcome to the programme. The Iranians have been very clear, Hassan. No Lebanon, no deal. But that's getting much more complicated with the occupation by Israel of the south. So is there any room for negotiation here from the Iranians?
I think the Iranians are trying to support their allies, but also the Lebanese government and its sovereignty. When the Israelis were about to attack Beirut, they threatened to intervene, and they published the well-known map of northern Israel, that if Beirut is attacked, Iran will attack Israel. Now they're saying that this deal is not a recipe for peace there. It doesn't talk about withdrawal of Israeli forces from southern Lebanon. 10% of the territory is under occupation. Doesn't talk about the return of the displaced people, nearly 1 million Lebanese who were displaced from the south, and it doesn't talk about the reconstruction of southern Lebanon. It only gives Israel the pretext to continue launching attacks. This is basically what we saw previously. It's a unilateral ceasefire. Hezbollah should stop attacking Israel, with Israel having the right to operate freely in southern Lebanon. That's unacceptable to Hezbollah and to Iran. And the Iranians waited for the Secretary General of Hezbollah to announce, and then they backed him in their refusal to this deal.
David, this is an agreement that does favour Israel. Is America an honest broker here?
Well, the United States is a superpower. The definition of superpower is we have interests anywhere. So I think you could always question whether we're an honest broker on any agreement anywhere in the world. That's more of an academic question. But obviously there's an engineering problem when the problem is Lebanese Hezbollah. The agreement was not, it was between the Lebanese government, which Lebanese Hezbollah is antithetical to, and Israel, which Hezbollah is antithetical. So you've got an engineering problem. But the important points here, where I'll take some disagreements. First off, Iran does not have an ally in Lebanon. Allies are states. Iran has a proxy that is a non-state actor that has been steadily subverting the Iranian state for decades. Secondly, Iran did not include Lebanon seriously in the discussions. They talked about the nuclear program, Strait of Hormuz, sanction relief, until it was apparent with the Axios argument that the two parties were so far apart. And then basically they did the same thing a referee does in 89 minutes of a soccer match where the outcome's not in question and he's made some questionable calls. You give the side that's been wrong a make-up call. They're trying to rewrite the historical record here. Lebanese Hezbollah has been left to its own devices, and it's not strong enough to oppose Israel. The threat to attack northern Israel is kind of like when Iran sanctions somebody.
Right.
It's pro forma. By the way, if you can get me sanctioned when you go back, that'd look good on my resume. So, I think what we're at is a situation where there's many, many deals here. But all those conditions, reconstruction, return of refugees, if that's included in a U.S.-Iran ceasefire, that will take years. And that's clearly not reasonable.
Well, talking of referees, I'm going to be the referee here. Hassan, what's your response to that?
Well, I think I agree that a deal looks really hard to achieve in the near-term future because the main issue, I think, is occupation. Israel attacking left and right everywhere with the full backing of the United States in the region. They attacked Iran. I think that news should be broken on many who talk about Israel and the United States and Iran and its allies. And I think it's important also to note that Iran included Lebanon from the get-go during the war in the 10 points they put on the table as a background for, or the grounds for a ceasefire. They included Lebanon. 1 point was on Lebanon and another also including Lebanon in a more regional sort of framing, suggesting that 20% of Iran's diplomacy is focused on the region and Lebanon, and they never stopped in the negotiations. U.S. negotiators have talked about it. The Iranians are bringing in Lebanon, and this is making it more complicated. And eventually, when that didn't turn into a deal, the Iranians resorted to force. And I think there was a decision in Iran because the way they talked about it, it was clear there's a decision to get him to intervene if the Israelis are to attack Beirut. Actually, that was a red line set to U.S. negotiators in Pakistan that if Beirut is attacked, will intervene against Israel. And so it has always been part of the process for the Iranians.
Let's talk about the agreement, David. One of the things in the agreement that's very clear is that these pilot zones, so the Lebanese army will go in and take over parts of southern Lebanon, and that the Lebanese army will get arms from America. But there's a problem here because for decades, Israel, using the American qualitative military edge law, which gives them veto effectively over arming the Lebanese army, isn't going to be happy with even an army that can take on Hezbollah, because that's a problem for Israel. So you've got a political problem here as well, right?
Well, we always have a political problem when we're trying to deal with the internal dealings of a state that neighbors Israel. But the QME doesn't really come into play here. That deals more with advanced weapons.
But it is the thing that Israel uses to, keep its enemies down.
I honestly, well, no, it doesn't apply. I've never heard it applied to Lebanon in a quantitative. Usually we're talking about things like Saudi Arabia wanting to get advanced radar that can look into Israel. The type of weaponry the United States has provided significant billions of dollars support to the army of the Lebanese state to regain sovereignty over the past few years. That doesn't come into play with that. The QME is not really a relevant issue. There is, however, and it's very important to bear in mind, I'm not here to highlight just the strengths of American fleet, but also the flaws. The United States wants to see a sovereign, unitary Lebanese state where the Lebanese armed forces has a monopoly over the use of violence. Iran wants to maintain a state within a state that is responsive to Iran, and whose status is announced by the Revolutionary Guard instead of the Foreign Ministry. It makes you wonder, what a state is there. But the contradictory in American thinking is we want the Lebanese state to be sovereign, but I think we would have a problem if that sovereign Lebanese state were to go into direct conflict with Israel. That is an unresolved paradox in American thinking, but I don't think we're at that point yet.
Hassan, is it acceptable to the Iranians for the Lebanese army to take over Hezbollah positions in the south of Lebanon?
Sure thing. That's a must moving forward. But the problem is the Tom Barak statement that was ratified by the Lebanese government and then was ditched basically by the same government talked about destroying Lebanese arms, not moving them and giving them to the army. It's the strategy from '51 when the tripartite, Britain, France, and the United States decided that Israel should have a qualitative edge against all its neighbors. So they have to be weak. Sovereignty, but weak, very weak, that it can't basically pose any threat or it can't shield itself if Israel decides to attack at will. So the Iranians don't see it that way. The Iranians want strong states in the region that can work and balance the Israelis and their hegemonic tendencies in the region that are backed by the United States. Two different, drastically different views. And so Hezbollah was willing, with the guarantees Hochstein and then Tom Barak gave the Lebanese, was willing to give its arms to the Lebanese army, but then they basically came up with the idea that these arms should be destroyed, not moved to the Lebanese army. A strong Lebanese army is not at all what the United States and Israel want, whereas Iran actually proposed to the Lebanese army, it's willing to arm it and make it a formidable force against the Israelis to balance them off.
An interesting discussion. Thank you both, and we'll get into that more as the weeks go on.